Welcome to the Great Honey Podcast. I'm Maya, the Amerlin Bee,
I'm Marcelle, the Gleeman.
and this is a show where we talk about all things Wheel of Time. If you're joining us from YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe and leave a comment so we can chat. Although I'm not going to lie, I haven't looked at the comments in a while, and I apologize if you said something. I promise to look after we record this.
Of course. So last episode, we were dealing with the kind of the fallout from, I guess, Rand and Loial stealing the dagger and the horn from Pattern Fane and the Trollocs and the Dark Friends that were working with him. And essentially, we get to sort of a weird end to the Great Hunt. It's kind of like a weird, I think we kind of play with the idea that the books are over. Okay, they finished. They got the horn, they got the dagger, all the issues are solved, everything is good. But
It's going to heal.
Yeah.
Hurin and Rand can go home.
Exactly. I don't think that's the case realistically, but so essentially we get the horn back, we get the dagger, and then chapter 20 it's called Sidene, which is a very important word. And I think it's the first chapter named after Sidene, but it's essentially the male half of the one power. So women channel the one power and they call it Sidar. Men channel the one power and it's called Sidene. And this chapter is called Sidene. And I think for an important reason here. And I think we kind of were alluding, Selene's kind of a sus character last chapter. In the chapter, every chapter she's been introduced, she's kind of seemed to know a little bit more than we would expect someone in the world that's been introduced to us to know about male channeling. And in this chapter, I think we kind of get to a sort of a realization about Selene. She's kind of clearly got motivations outside of helping Matt, which is all Matt, or that's all that Rand cares about, at this point. And she's got motivations that's outside of getting home from the world, because I mean, they're back in the real world now at this point. And she seems to still be really interested in the horn, really interested in, I guess, kind of like Rand and, getting him to utilize his power. And so that's kind of where we start this chapter. And they kind of find a weird sort of monument that really draws Rand's attention. What do you think about this interaction? I think I've always talked about, I think probably pretty much like all the podcasts we've done so far, I've talked about how I enjoy I don't know, the feeling that people get when they channel the one power. And this is a good chapter of that, where Rand is he gets to this monument that he kind of feels so connected to and feels so much power coming from it. Do you get a sense? It's basically from a statue that's sticking out of the ground, a hand, seemingly a male hand. I think it is also a head. You can kind of tell it's a male.
Yeah.
But a hand holding a spear, and it kind of draws Rand's attention.
It's the tip of the spear, right? Is the thing that he's really drawn to. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like the way I pictured it probably isn't really how it is. I feel like I overfocus on trying to picture things, but I imagine the statue is basically freestanding and all of these people are digging around it, and that they're just looking down at this big hole in the ground.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
So
that's kind of how I see it.
It's like a full body almost, but it's like the size of, I don't know, Statue of Liberty. I don't know if the Statue of Liberty is really that tall, but
it's pretty good. Yeah,
something,
pretty good size.
Something in that neighborhood of tallness. Yeah. Underground. So I'm just how did it get there? That's sort of what I'm wondering. And before we were recording, I was saying I think my initial reaction was that it has to be something like a terangrial or sangrial. I don't know what the distinction is between all of the different angrials
I
also
think like
yet.
the difference in the names is the strength, the amount of one power, the amount of one power that you can pull through it. So I think a sangrial might be the strongest one, and I think a
Okay.
terangrial is like the lowest one. Then there's a yeah, actually, I'm not gonna even say that because I can't remember because I think there's a one in the middle, but I think sangrials are the strongest one.
Okay. Yeah. So that was what I thought. Also, just like, I don't know, the this chapter, I think the funniest thing to me is the soldiers who are really fascinated by Rand and his curiosity about the statue and them trying to explain it in a way where the lords, I don't, do they explain in this chapter why they're digging up the statue? That some lord wants to move it?
I think that's the case. I think it was some lord wanted to move it or to maybe like somehow make some profit from it. I can't remember
Yeah.
exactly, but it was like a king or a lord
Yeah, like
that
make it
wanted
a
to get it.
museum thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
And I
no, put it
think,
back. It's cursed.
yeah. I mean, like anytime anyone pulls something out of the ground that's like ancient, I'm just like, just leave it.
Yeah.
Everything was fine before you took it out. Like we've seen the movies, we know what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I think there's definitely a connection to the one power. I
Yeah.
think in this chapter also Rand kind of goes into the void here as well as to, a way to like deal with his emotions again, which I think again we keep seeing this happen with Rand, where
Mhm.
every time he feels, not sure of himself, not sure of how he feels, he goes into the void, which is a place where no emotions can. I mean, I guess emotions can break through, but it's a place
He
to
can
avoid
like
your
he
emotions.
can observe them, it seems.
Yeah,
He knows he feels that way, but it doesn't get to him.
right. It's like a sort of like a shell he can like hide in
Yeah.
while his emotions rage outside, basically. But yeah, so it's like, there's this weird sort of way that Rand, it's not weird, I guess. I guess it's more just like it's a pattern with Rand where
Mhm.
he finds something difficult to deal with, he drops into this void, which is I think it's described as a soldier's trick to ignore your emotions so that he can focus, but he's using it more and more as a way to just avoid his own emotions for everything, you
Yeah.
know.
He needs a journal.
Yeah, he needs a journal and definitely a therapist. I think
Yeah.
at this point.
And then he just
um,
gets like a hilarious security detail escort into Cairhien, even though he's like, I'm not a lord. I don't need this.
right.
And he's just like, this army is just like riding into the city with him, just
Yeah,
making it so that they make a big scene and
I
turn the
love this
city.
part of it. Like we can kind of, I mean, like I'm gonna kind of skip ahead a little bit here, and like I love this arc because it's a continuation from the beginning of this book, The Great Hunt, where Rand is being thrusted into the lordship sort of like position. And he hates it. And like I love all the Two Rivers characters that get put in this position. I think everyone except like Egwene would handle this position poorly. But it's just like
True.
every time it happens, it's so good. It's so funny because it's just, everyone treats him like a lord. He's like, I'm literally a farmer. Like, that's all I know is how to farm sheep. I'm a sheep herder. And
People are
everyone
like,
just,
yeah, right. You're a
yeah, okay.
farmer.
It's like, okay, tall dude with red hair that's like very rare and like, yada
Nice
yada.
coat.
Yeah, exactly. He can't not act like a lord because it seems so foreign to other people, even in Cairhien, which is like it's kind of a place where I guess you can say it's one of the bigger kingdoms in this world. And I think, the fact that he's dressed the way he is, the way he's acting, people are, they, and it's kind of, this is where the whole Game of Thrones aspect comes in. Like Cairhien is kind of like the King's Landing, I guess, if you want to say. Not really, because it's not like the place of power, but it is a place of like politics and like mischievous sort of like back dealing sort of stuff.
So it's
Like,
Washington, D.C.
yes, exactly. And it's like, everyone like they see someone like this who's like coming in like acting like he's not a lord, but like looks every inch and inch the lord. And so they think he's playing a game, and so they immediately kind of like see that they like, okay, they're like, this guy is, he's somebody important, why else would he be like this? And so they're treating him like that, which is
Yeah.
funny because he literally is trying everything to not give off that that sort of aura.
It's funny when they get to the city and like are just trying to find an inn that Selene starts acting weird. Like she seems really like, I don't know, agitated or annoyed that they're actually going in the city. Like she didn't actually mean them to.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of Fiona right before sunset in Shrek,
Yeah,
where it's like she
exactly.
obviously has something to hide, but we don't know what.
Yeah, it's something, there's something about being around other people that like some that kind of unsettles her, because as soon as they're going to go into the city, she starts to be all weird about everything. She doesn't
Yeah.
want to go. The whole time she's been like, let's not go there, I want to
Yeah.
go somewhere else, like, glory. She keeps like pressing him for glory, and like, and Rand's just like, I need to go into the city to wait for Ingtar and wait for Matt to show up because I have a dagger and all that. And so yeah, I mean, again, she just seems very sus, and that just continues to be the case. So they go into a place called Nine Rings, which is an inn,
It's a
right?
nice
And
nod to a certain Nine Rings.
yes, exactly. It's very intentional, I'm sure. And they go into this inn where so this is kind of, it's interesting because there's so much with the Cairhien, and you'll learn that they're just very, suspect of everybody, and they don't, especially lords. Like if they think that Rand's a lord, so they, and he kind of introduces himself as one because he feels like he's got to go along with the rules because that's what everyone believes. And
Little does
uh,
he know, he's
yeah,
like,
exactly. He's like, he's stirring all this commotion even though he's trying to lay low, right? So
mm,
the fact that he shows up with this like very beautiful woman that they seem like very lordly, and like no one can place their origin or anything, and they make up a story about it. And kind of strangely, I guess, for this innkeeper, um Selene asked for her own room, and Rand asked to have a room with Loial and Hurin. Um, and they kind of interpret that as like, Selene and Rand have like, they're on the outs, like something's going on with their relationship. That's why they need a different room. But but yeah, so it's like, they kind of settle in a little bit in this way. And I guess at some point you know, people at this inn start to I don't know, they try to figure out what Rand is, about. They see his heron marked sword. They notice he's from Andor, so he kind of says he's an Andoran lord, or they just assume that he is. And I don't know, how did you feel about this sort of like, and it's kind of like a aside because it's just like one of these things where when I remember reading this, I'm just like, what is, it's a bunch of like, I kind of almost like felt like it was taking from the Lord of the Rings, but like obviously this book came out, or not the Lord of the Rings, the Game of Thrones, because it's like that sort of like the Desdemar thing kind of really reminded me of Game of Thrones. The idea of like, you know, thrones and like doing these sort of backdoor dealings and like manipulations to like, acquire more power, everything like that. And I felt like that was just kind of thrusted into this story. And it was kind of weird. But how did you feel about this whole dynamic here?
I felt like it was like laying groundwork for maybe later on when Rand will inevitably probably have to do some kind of game of houses thing when people want to like be in his army or whatever. I
Right.
just know there's a last battle. They keep hyping it up. So I'm assuming he's got to like get some lords behind him. So I just assumed that that was sort of what it was for, even though it did feel really random,
Yeah.
especially because it seems like all the other places we've gone to, the people in power don't seem to like care that much for politics or like get that involved in them. Another, I guess, kind of thinking about Game of Thrones and the Game of Houses and how they just sound so similar, it feels almost like the Game of Houses kind of pokes fun or is kind of a more lighthearted take on it and just kind of
Yeah.
like pokes at the ridiculousness of it, where as Rand keeps doing things trying to stay out of this game of houses that he just kind of bumbles into, he just like keeps doing these power moves without realizing it, like saying he's not a lord and saying he's not going to participate and that he's going to stay in an inn with his servant. All of that everyone takes as some kind of, I don't
Move.
know. Yeah. And he's just
He
like,
gets
no,
so
I'm
angry
just,
about it because he's just like continually like, I'll just burn the letters and I guess that's like a thing where they send lords letters to like go, or invitations, I guess, to go to their parties or to just come meet with them. And Rand just keeps burning them because he doesn't, I'm not a lord. I don't want to deal with this. I'm just waiting for Ingtar. And he stubbornly, that's his trademark as of the Two Rivers, but he stubbornly doesn't want to actually play this game in any way to get what he wants, which is ultimately to be left alone, right? But like he's not playing it at all, and thus he's inflaming it, or
yeah.
like getting people to be more interested in him, which is like, it's super interesting to me. I always like kind of think of this trajectory here, or this story arc with him kind of being like a leader, kind of put in this role because Hurin and Loial aren't going to step in that role, so he kind of has to. And it's just like, kind of coming to a head where it's like it's kind of being forced upon him in
Yeah.
a way, and he's still refusing it, even though it's like he needs to make some real decisions, but he just keeps trying to run away from everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I really love this story arc. I thought I wouldn't like it very much because it seems so silly and the lords are kind of silly, but it's just like a, I don't know, it's a fun diversion, I guess.
Yeah,
Also kind of wraps up surprisingly fast in the
it
like
does.
large scheme of the book.
So I guess at a certain point, Selene is gone. She disappears,
Yeah, she
and
just
that's
run
kind of how this ends up.
did she just like leaves a note in their room, right?
Right.
In her pretty loopy handwriting.
And I guess like he can smell or tell that it's
Yeah.
hers. Kind of creepy. But but yeah, she's gone again. She's only doing things that are very, very curious. How did she get out? No one saw her leave. But she's gone. And, Rand kind of feels, you know, weird
Yeah.
about it because I think he's a little sad that she's gone, but like, I don't know. It's a weird character. And it kind of leaves Rand in a position of like, I don't know. I think he thought he would get answers from her or get something more from her, but
Yeah.
it just kind of, obviously it's going to be. I think it's pretty clear that we'll see her in some way again, but at this point she's gone. So
Yeah. And then we catch up with Moraine and Lan. and they're visiting two, are they Brown Aja sisters?
One is brown Aja, and I think the other is green. I'm
Okay.
not positive on that, but I think for sure one is not. They're not both the same Aja. I think that's a point.
Okay.
Um,
I know
but
one
I
of
think
them has a warder, or at least one of them has a warder.
yeah, I think so. I think they both do, maybe, but maybe just one. But yeah, um,
But they're like old. Like they look
right,
old, which Aes Sedai typically look ageless. So if they show a sign of
right.
age, that means they must be old. Although I have not yet gotten any like sense of scale about how old Aes Sedai are. Like, are we talking you're 60 and you look 20? Or are you like 400 and you look 70?
I think it depends on. I think it depends on when you start using the one power.
Mm,
I think that has an effect on how you look. If you start using it younger, I think you maybe look younger, longer. Um, if you start using it when you're older, maybe you look different. Um, Still ageless, but like, not as young. Maybe I don't know.
yeah.
It's a complicated thing. That's why I don't think the show is delving into the ageless thing.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to convey, I think.
Also, it would be kind of boring if they all looked the same age.
Yeah. I think the everyone would always like speculate before the show came out that the idea would be that they would kind of have like CGI looking faces, like faces that you would imagine is that are CGI, and that's why they look ageless because you can't tell. But
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
some
that
deep
doesn't,
fake stuff.
yeah, it doesn't look good, right? Like no one wants
Yeah.
to see that. So I think the idea that it's just, I don't know. I think for film, it's better not to worry about that. But
Yeah.
but if for the book's purposes, the older they look in appearance, the older that they are, you can imagine probably hundreds of years, some
Yeah.
centuries of life. If they look old, I think it's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. And the two sisters, Adelaus and Vandine,
Vandine, yeah.
they are basically studying to find what the creator is, right? Like they're trying to catalog the history of all of time or
Yeah,
something. Like they have this very ambitious goal to just know everything.
right. It's a weird combination because they're kind of just trying to figure this thing out together
Yeah.
and from different ages, which is, I think it makes sense for Brown, but it doesn't
Mm.
make as much sense for. I want to say that the other sister is green. But, I'm going to go ahead and stake my claim that one of these sisters is green and one's brown. I don't remember which one's which, but I think the idea here is no, yeah, okay. Morel is green.
Yeah, that's the lady who Moraine is threatening to send Lan to if she dies. Because
Okay,
Moraine weirdly like gives Lan like hints that she's making arrangements for her death, basically, like writing a
right.
will and all of that, which really, really makes Lan
Okay,
upset.
okay. So yeah, that's the case. So like Morel is not here. It's Van Deen. Van Deen and is it Adelorna?
Adelaus,
Adelaide. Okay.
Delius.
Van Deen, I'm pretty sure is the green. And I think Morel's a green that Moraine kind of drops on land that, you're not gonna die. Because the water bond kind of means if you're bonded to an Aes Sedai, when they die, you kind of go into a warrior, like sort of avenge sort of mode where you attack whoever you can to avenge your fallen Aes Sedai. And she doesn't want that for Lan because she thinks he's too powerful and too useful to just waste like that.
Yeah.
And she knows her mission is very dangerous and that she could likely die, right? So she doesn't want Lan to suffer that fate if she dies. So basically, she's like, tells Lan that I will send you to Morel. That's kind of
Who
what we
keeps a
find out
lot of
here.
warders and is like
Yeah,
a very nice and fun person.
right. Apparently, she's someone who's, I don't know if this is a spoiler. I don't think so, but I think basically she specializes in making sure if an Aes Sedai's warder dies, or if an Aes Sedai dies, that their warder doesn't necessarily commit like, suicide and trying to avenge their Aes Sedai. So she kind of takes on a lot of warders because she thinks, I mean, partially one thing that does help a warder if their Aes Sedai dies is to take on another Aes Sedai, or be bonded by another Aes Sedai. So that plus there's other things that the Aes Sedai can do to try to help keep them from trying to like, go out in a blaze of glory, essentially. But Land is not like this. He hates the idea that this is happening. But we kind of also see Land sort of like resolve. I think he's super upset that Moraine has decided this, which of course he would be because he signed up to defend her to the death. And the
Yeah.
fact that she's like, I might die, and if that happens, I'm just going to like force you to go to someone else instead of defending me or avenging me, which is kind of screwed up. Which
Yeah.
is maybe the Moraine sort of way of being, where she just like she thinks he's useful and doesn't want him, and so she makes this decision by herself. She doesn't like ask Lan about this. He doesn't consort him or
Yeah.
ask him about this or think about it in any other way other than what she thinks, which is
Yeah.
kind of selfish. So, and I get it though, right? You get it from a certain end because like Lan is a good fighter, he's a good warder, and maybe he shouldn't die, but like I don't know. It's a weird thing because I get maybe where she's coming from, but I kind of take Lan's side on this. I feel like this is
Yeah.
kind of not fair at all.
Yeah. I feel like this chapter is kind of random in like
Yeah,
a I don't I'm now a book and some change away from this scene. And I still don't really know why they went or
yeah.
had this conversation.
I think partially why she goes here is to learn more about the Creathon cycle, more about the Dragon Reborn, more about the Shadow and the last battle. I think that's kind of her goal, Moraine.
Yeah. But it's just like at
Um,
the same time, you still don't really like know what she read or found out. Partially
right.
just because they get ambushed.
Yeah. By a drag car. Which what do you think about these? I think we've heard about them. They sound kind of like dragons, right? Because this whole thing is about dragon, at least one dragon. But this thing shows up
Oh.
and kind of like lulls Moraine into this weird sense of or stupor almost, and then like almost kills her.
Yeah.
It's a weird creature of the shadow that we didn't get to. We kind of knew or we saw a little bit of last book, but we didn't actually get to see it in its full glory.
Yeah, they're weird. They remind me of like a vampire,
Yes,
but
exactly.
a little bit less humanoid and honestly with cooler abilities than a vampire.
Right.
But they like look
Yeah.
like people, right? Kind of like how the
Yeah.
Murdral looks like a person but without eyes.
Yeah, I
And they
think
have
they're
noses.
kind of described as like they look kind of like a good looking sort of like dude, I guess. I think is mostly like male, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
if they're always male looking. But the shadow spawn are kind of weird in there because like Trollocs can be male or female, but I don't know that you can tell the difference
Hmm.
ever. But Dragcar, I think at least in the depictions I've seen in like fan art and stuff are always like very kind of what you would imagine from a vampire, like
Yeah.
someone that looks kind of creepy but also like in a sort handsome in a certain way, and they always have a male figure and they have wings, and these can sting to you in a way that will make you kind of go into like a stasis or sort of like I guess like a like sort of hypnosis a little bit, and you can't, you kind of just lose yourself in the song that they sing to you, and they draw you in, and then they kill you that way. That's kind of how they do their thing.
Like a Jigglypuff.
Right. Exactly, like a Jigglypuff. Yeah. Um, they're not pink though, and they're not cuddly
They're
looking.
not cute.
They're not cute.
Yeah, they're
Um,
cool.
yeah,
I'm looking at pictures of them. It's like pretty much exactly how I pictured them.
yeah. I'm curious. They haven't shown them in the show yet, so I'm curious if they'll put them in and what they
Yeah.
might look like.
I feel like they're going to introduce like one or two shadow spawn creatures a season just to
There's a
not
few more.
overwhelm.
There's a few more that they need to introduce, I think. But I'm
Yeah.
curious.
Are Grom considered shadow spawn, or are they like?
I think so. I think they are. I can't remember though.
Are they just ugly?
I think they might be just ugly, but but yeah, I think either they're actually I think they might not be shadow spawn actually. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but I think they're we will see them again. Like I said, all I'll say is that I think we do see them again, and I don't think they're shadow spawn. But I think, yeah, obviously Dragcar and the Trollerton and the Fades are, I think those are the only ones as of yet we've seen. Moraine almost gets killed by this Dragcar. Luckily, she's saved by the warders that are able to, realize what's going on in time in order to save her. She does learn, I guess, some information about the Dragon Reborn.
It seems like to me, I think the most emotional beat or like the big thing was Rand or not Rand, Lan and Moraine talking about Moraine dying and like her preparing him for that. And the
Right.
moment that Lan has with the elderly warder where they're just like chatting outside and working out together.
Right, right.
I think that like I guess I just didn't pay attention to
I mean, I guess kind of what she figures out here is that like Moraine is trying to figure out, is Rand actually the Dragon Reborn? What do we do now? I thought we, last book she thought we kind of did what we needed to do. And she's trying to figure out where to go next.
yeah.
I think that's why she's here. And I think that she's starting to realize that, that first what happened in the first book when there's a 14 book series isn't all that they need to do.
Dang it.
Yeah. Our last chapter here, the testing. So we go back to the White Tower. We're back with this time Nynaeve. So basically she's doing her accepted test. What did you think, like before we get into the test itself? What did you expect? Because they kind of like were like, she's got to take her test, and like you get this sense that like being a novice is like terrible, but like taking the test to be accepted is so difficult. There's just so much that goes into being an Aes Sedai that seems so hard.
Yeah.
But what did you expect before we actually get into what the test actually was? What did you think about what it might be?
I expected an exam, like an oral exam, where she has to perform some tasks that she would have
Right.
learned as a novice.
Yeah, yeah.
And that
That's kind of what I was
be,
thinking.
like it would be like a fully practical test.
I don't know if you ever seen this show called The Magicians or read the books. Essentially, to get into this magic school, you had to take a test that like you couldn't prepare for or study for or anything. And I kind of was expecting something like that. And for this test, you didn't really need to know anything,
No, you didn't
about
have
the
to
one
be
power or
able to
anything.
channel or there's
Right.
no channeling involved.
Exactly. And actually, they kind of like don't want you to channel. So it's like, it's just really just like your strength of will, like how dedicated are you to it, which I guess makes sense. But I was kind of worried when they started, because I'm just like, if it's an actual test about channeling, which I imagined, yeah, I didn't have much faith that Nynaeve can perform well.
Yeah, but
but
they're
yeah,
also like very aware that she can't channel. So I guess it makes sense that they'd be like, all right, she can take the test, even though she can't
right,
seem to channel of her own volition.
right. I love this line in the when she's so essentially, I guess we should say it's a terangrial that the test is based in. And essentially, what happens is you go through these rings or like these arches. And
Yeah.
once you walk through each arch, you find a new test, a test of your will. And they're told that there's a way out of each test, and that is the test in and of itself, that you go to where you need to go, uh, even faced with the adversity you might, find in the test itself. Um,
The
and so
instructions are the way out will come but once. Be steadfast.
right.
It's
And it's
repeated a lot.
repeated.
So
Yeah, it's repeated a bunch because
it's like
it's
the
supposed
one
to be
thing
your
you're supposed
mantra.
to remember, right?
Right. And she can't really, and that's like another thing that's all she seems to be able to remember, is that when the way comes, she has to go. And it's like, up to her to like shrug off whatever is happening in that dream sequence, to forget it or, ignore it or get through it to get to the exit.
Yeah. And you get
Um,
one second chance if you are standing before the first ring and you decide you don't want to do it anymore.
right.
Or do you get after the first ring, do you also get to drop out? Or if you go through, you have to just see it through?
I think when you go through, you have to see it through.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay.
I think like right before when they like take away all your stuff, you have to go through them naked. They say
Right.
you
Yeah.
can you can turn back now and you have one more chance, otherwise you have to leave.
Right. I think there's something to the fact that like, they keep saying there's been people who go through it and don't come back.
Mhm.
That's or if they come back and don't pass, then they're like mentally like ruined or something like that along those lines. And I'm just like, it's just, it just seems sort of like barbaric in a way, but kind of sophisticated because it's like,
Yeah.
a weird sort of magical test that like specifically is testing you and your through your own mental, like it's a weird thing because it's like, there's one thing to take a test, right? That
Mhm.
like someone like sets up, but it's like, let me find exactly, what you find difficult and then make you, face that difficulty in order
Yeah.
to like prove your, prove your resilience, prove your like, dedication, which is just I don't know that I don't know how that I would do well in something like that.
Yeah. So the first one is your fears of the past,
Right.
right? It's like
Yeah.
you have to face a fear from your past. And so Nynaeve steps into the first ring. She doesn't really hesitate that much. She kind of just does it.
Yeah.
She's just like, well, I got to get this over with because I need to be able to channel so I can do cool stuff.
Right.
And she's like, it's funny because she just doesn't really care for all of the like Aes Sedai, like, I don't know, philosophies and stuff, but she sees it as a means to an end. And what happens in her first trial?
Like this is back when, you know, the Forsaken, kind of she's thinking back to the first book where Agenor shows up and it's about to like do whatever to her in those moments where she like steps up to like protect everybody. Um I guess it's kind of like a I don't know. I think I guess my question for you is like, what do you? I don't know. I guess what do you think that her struggle is mostly here? Because I
Yeah.
think it's like a persistent thing with her through all of these. It's like you know it kind of talks a bunch about her character in these because it's like, what does she want to do every time? It's not that like she's worried about saving herself. It's never about her. She's
Yeah.
never the focal point of it. It's always about other people and like the fact that she needs to protect them, or you know, that she needs to do something,
Yeah.
you know, do her duty. I think that's a, I don't know, what did you think about, you know, how this kind of like manifests for her, at least, I mean, in this first one too, where it's like, you know, the first one of the biggest, you know, ways that she actually like pr- tries to protect somebody. She stands up against the Forsaken, which is like, you know, to protect the people that she set out to protect. She stands up against, as far as this world is concerned, like one of the most evil people in like an all of like fable and lore, you know.
Yeah. Does she fail? Like, does she just get knocked out or something? Or does he just run off with Rand and she doesn't get to protect him? Is that it?
I think when
Like
the
that,
archers are,
well, I'm saying like from the eye of the world, like when
oh
she
right,
does meet Agnor, she doesn't actually successfully do anything other than just be very bold and try
right,
to square up to a Forsaken.
yeah, she gets like knocked out, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure. She doesn't like actually, because I think Agenor like grabs her and like starting to say all this creepy stuff about what he would do to her and whatever. And I think that's kind of when Moraine comes up and starts to like attack. But and then after that, everyone like flees in different areas. Because I think
Yeah.
that's after land had already been like knocked back, or whatever, with the force of air or whatever.
So I feel like if anything, it's just that it really eats her up that she wasn't able to do anything
Hmm.
and that she didn't protect her wards.
Right. Yeah, I think there's something to, you know, the fact that she has to be naked in these, and like there's, this is one of my pet peeves for this series, so it'll
Yeah.
continue, that you know, the people have to be naked during certain things, and it generally is women. And so
Yeah.
like it's kind of one of my things. I was just like, why do they always have to be naked? But you know, it's part of like this is this test that she has to be naked, and she keeps being aware that she's naked. And that plays into like how she's able to like, you know, the how, you know, it's supposed to challenge her wits, right? Like, you
Yeah.
know, are you going to be able to do this, or are you going to be too worried about being naked, kind of thing, which is fine. But like, you know, ultimately, you know, she attacks Agenor with lightning, I believe, and then she decides, you know, basically she sees the archers appear, um and she
And
doesn't really know.
she hears like a disembodied voice. It's Sheriam's voice, right?
Right.
Just saying that
Yeah.
the way back will come but once.
Be steadfast. And she doesn't know, because in I don't know if he said this, but like in these memories or these exams, she doesn't really remember anything else other than what is given to her to know. And so
Yeah.
the only thing she really knows is that like she has the desire to do this one thing, go through the arches when they're presented, you know. And so she's also presented with the fact that she wants to defend and protect people, and so she has to decide, you know, between that desire to protect and the desire to do what she needs to do. And ultimately in this test, she passes and she goes to the arch. And um
Honestly, it seemed kind of easy to me.
yeah,
The first
yeah,
one,
yeah,
I was like, that wasn't that bad. Like you try to hold your own until you see the arch and then you run through it.
right.
Can't
I
be
mean,
that hard.
it'd be easier if she had all her memories, right?
Yeah.
That's what's difficult, because she can't really remember what she's doing there or why. And it's like
Yeah.
she kind of slowly like starts to, all she knows is that the way comes but once, and be steadfast. And so like when the arches show up, she knows she needs to go through them, but she doesn't know why really, but she's got to be convicted, you know, to do it. So
Yeah.
once she goes through, she kind of gets all her memories back, and then, you know, Shuriam's there and to like kind of like help her and usher her through the next set of arches.
How
She's
do
got
you
two more to go.
how do you picture the sensation of like coming back out and then like you're just like suddenly in like the creepy dark room again?
I don't know. I kind of think of it like from the last book where Rand starts to like in the last chapter or last couple chapters when he comes back after defeating Balsamon and everything, and he's getting his memories back. I kind of feel like it's like that, but a little faster. In that, like she's like all of her memories kind of crash back into her, and she's like, you know, still has the memories of the arch, and she's just like realizing like, you know, that she was kind of someone else in that moment, and now she's having to reckon with, you know, the fact that she did make the choice but she left her friends, right? So
Yeah.
it's like kind of like that sort of thing where it's she did the right thing for the test but she hates that she did it. I feel like
Yeah.
that's a continual thing here.
Yeah. You have to like shed that thing. For
Yeah,
me, it feels like waking up from anesthesia. Like that's like how I picture
yeah.
it, where you like are just like, because you like wake up all at once and you're just like, oh wow. And like when you're like under, you like have weird dreams. And then I don't know. I don't know if you've ever been under anesthesia, but that's how it
I
felt to
haven't.
me.
I would imagine so. I mean, I feel like it's like I feel like the way it's described, it's like a it's same with Moran when he like got his memories back. You know,
Yeah.
it kind of feels like or when you like fall asleep in some weird place. Like if I like take a
Yeah.
nap randomly in the middle of the day when I don't normally or
Yeah. And then you
something, and
wake
I'm
up
like,
and
I
it's
wake up.
dark.
Yeah. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like what? And
Yeah.
then everything was like, oh yeah, you felt, you know, all that stuff that kind of happens when you like randomly like fall asleep. But you know, it's definitely like a really difficult thing for her because she continually starts to hate Aes Sedai, I think, as we
Yeah.
go through here. And so
Yeah.
the next one, she goes to the Two Rivers, right?
Hmm.
Where it's not the same village she left behind. It's the kind of a village where she had left and she's going back to it.
Yeah.
And they've moved on. Like so she was the wisdom, but they have moved on and they have like a new wisdom now because she wasn't there. And you know she kind of like starts to figure out what's going on, and like, you know, all of our favorite characters from the Two Rivers kind of show up.
Yeah.
You know, mostly like, you know, Bran Alvear or I guess
Marin.
Meryn Alvear,
Yeah.
you know, Egwene's mom and dad. But you know, they're kind of like doing this sort of weird, you know, this the world that kind of got left behind for them is kind of bad. And
Yeah.
you know,
And
they
this is
kind of
supposed to be like her present. And
right,
so it's kind of like, what's the question of what is going on in Emmons Field now that she's gone
right.
and they don't have her leadership.
And they're wondering where Egwene is, and like, you know, Nynaeve can't say, or she
Mhm.
can't really remember because of the Terangrial, like I guess erased her memories for this.
Yeah.
Um and the new wisdom, I guess, is kind of like a jerk.
Yeah.
Um you know, and I guess like apparently she's killing people using poison,
Yeah,
which is
something,
another thing.
and like abusing her powers in the women's circle to do something
Right.
sketchy.
And apparently in this also, Marin accuses the wisdom of killing um Bran Alvear
Oh
with
wow.
poison. Um you know, I guess she's done other things. And you know, kind of like this is kind of infuriates Nynaeve, and you know, she still kind of sees herself as the wisdom at this point, and so she's you know feeling so bad about all of this because she abandoned. It's like if you were the mayor, right, and like you know needed you were a mayor of a city, and then like someone was like, hey, this other city kind of needs a little bit of help, or your friend, you know, your friend from college needs some help out in this other place, and you go out to help them, and then it's like, you know, it's been like a couple, you know, at least been like half a year,
Yeah.
and like they kind of moved on and like needed someone else to be the mayor at that point. And like when you come back, everything's different and like everyone's struggling and you feel responsible for that because she decided to leave, and like,
Yeah.
it wasn't like that beforehand. So I feel like she hasn't really shed her role as the wisdom, and so she kind of is feeling the guilt, I
Yeah.
think, of all this. Um, and it, I get it. It makes sense because she never really got to shed that. Everything that happened in the last book kind of like it was necessary, right?
Yeah.
Ran, and Perrin and Matt were in trouble, and Gwaine as well, and that's all she cared about, and she didn't really think about the rest of the village that kind of got left behind. So obviously that's something that's been weighing on her, and I think it's
Yeah.
just manifesting here.
And then she finds the arch. Like she was like mid
Right.
about to attack the new wisdom, and then the
Right.
arch shows up. And I
And
think
she,
when she gets
that's it.
back, she asks if it's real, right? Or is that someone else who asks? I think they all
No,
ask
she
that.
asks. I
And
think
then
she feels like broken after doing that
yeah,
because it's like so hard, and she chooses, the White Tower over, you know, herself as a wisdom. And so when she goes back to the arch, she asks like, is it real? And one of the Aes Sedai, I think it's Sheriam, right? Still, basically, it's like we don't know.
yeah.
It's like
But
it could
everyone
be
asks
some
after
other
that
world.
one, right?
Yeah. And it's like, kind of like screwed up. Like when you really think about this, like, and it's a wheel of time. So the series is like built on the idea of past lives and like possibly like, alternate. Well, we've already learned there's alternate worlds,
All
you
the
know.
all the different outcomes.
Yeah.
And
And
so
so
everyone's like, maybe.
this could be a real world they're touching into, that just like she gets to like go back to and experience, and like, they're using it as a test, but it could be real, and they
Yeah.
don't really know,
Because the
which is kind of screwed up.
Cairhien, they're all artifacts from before the breaking that they
Hmm.
were able to recover, and they don't know any of their intended uses,
Right.
but they like experiment with them, and sometimes they do things that are helpful, and then
Yeah. I
they
think
just
the
yeah,
ice that I've used the this one for the testing for a long time, and so they haven't really questioned it. Um and they're they're traditionals, so, or traditionalists, so they like kind of don't want to change any of this stuff. And so, if it works most of the time, they're kind of fine with it. And I think that's kind of what doesn't really work for Nynaeve, who is like, so, you know I think she really wants to do this to prove that she can, but she's also like, naive and thinks this is stupid. Like the idea
yeah,
that like she would go against her nature in order to choose the White Tower kind of continues to like hurt her, I think.
yeah,
And so then the third one is like kind of a future sort of, the
yeah,
third and last one is a future sort of experience where she's in Malkir with Lan, and uh, you know, she kind of steps in and is like, married with Lan, and they've been together for several years, I guess you can imagine here, and they've had kids, and Lan loves her, and when she's kind of aloof in this one too as well. She doesn't know why she's there, and she talks to Lan, and she can't really remember what happened or why, that they're married or anything like that. And Lan thinks she's joking, and because the
he's
whole
like
point is that
he's
she
like, what
can't
do
like
you mean, we've
remember.
been married forever and we've got kids?
Right. And this is kind of what she wanted, right? So it's like,
Yeah,
and this is why you can understand maybe some people stay in these places instead of like coming back through the arch. Like they decide like, yeah, this is actually what I wanted. Like, she's married to Lan, she's got kids, they seem to be happy, maybe I just stay here.
yeah,
Which
kind of like the San
yeah.
Junipero episode of
Yeah.
uh Glass Black Mirror.
Black Mirror.
Black
Yeah.
Mirror, yeah. Kind of just that, like, I can just be plugged in here forever.
Right. I mean, I get it.
And
I
it's like,
think it
are you alive or dead or conscious? But I guess it doesn't matter if you choose that, right?
right. it's a hard thing to discern because it's like what's real, what's not.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. But it's like, for Nynaeve, I think ultimately she realizes that like she doesn't believe it's real. Or
Yeah.
she doesn't want to leave the real land or the real land, I mean, out there, I think also. Cause like,
Yeah.
this land is obviously a land, but like it's not her land. It's not the one that she fell in love with. It's a version of him.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that plus the fact that she's dead, she wants to do this. And I think she somewhere deep inside knows it's a test. And like
Yeah.
when the archers show up, she goes through, even though Land is like, telling her, don't
Like
leave.
crying
Like,
and begging.
yeah, which she struggles against because the idea of Land begging her, which is kind of funny because it's like, this is meant in the book supposed to be like such a big difference in Land. Obviously, we've never seen him this emotional ever in real life, and as far as the books are concerned. But in the show, we've seen him be emotional,
Yeah.
which is like, I don't know how if they do this stuff in the show. I wonder how they'll try to. I mean, and maybe they just kind of go through with it like this because she knows what that might be like now. So it
Also, I
might
feel
be
like it
more.
would be very uncharacteristic of Land to not like also still have his care for Moraine,
Yeah,
at least as far as like she knows him, that
yeah,
like they're like bonded too.
because that's a big point of contention because she knows like Lance bonded to Moraine, like, and she doesn't really know if that can be undone or that Lan would even want it to be undone. So it's
Yeah, and like then just like grow old and have kids and settle
yeah,
in Malkir, which is a fallen city. So like
right.
how
It's it's an interesting thing, but it's part of why I think she realizes this isn't real, at least
yeah.
not real as she knows it. And so she's able to leave, and then when she gets out and falls through the ring, she realizes that she hates Aes Sedai, and
Yeah.
she can't believe that they would, allow such things to go on. But the Armelin shows up and recognizes her as an accepted of the White Tower after she's finished this, which
Yeah.
is after all this, it's just such an intense amount of stuff that she has to go through here.
Yeah.
Would
It is
you,
pretty brutal.
as an Armelin, yourself, you know, if you had to retake these tests, could you?
I don't think I'd want to.
I don't think I could either. I
I
don't know.
mean,
It's
some of
so
them didn't
much.
seem that bad, but I just like think about what my like past, present, and future fears would be, and then like finding out what they are and facing them, and then having to deal with that guilt, and then also have to just like decide to walk away and commit to this like Aes Sedai thing. It makes them seem like a cult.
Yeah, for sure. Because like it's not like they don't not remember. She
Yeah.
remembers like him Land being there, like saying, "Don't leave me." Like we have
Yeah.
kids, like, and then like as far as she knows, she doesn't know if it's like real or not. Like they don't they tell her the Aes Sedai tell her that they don't know if it's real.
And
So it's like it could be
they all refuse to talk about what happened to them.
right.
But
It's
it's
kind of screwed up.
traumatic for all of them. I don't know, it's weird.
And no one talks about it unless you bring it up, but like also like they don't get any like sort of, I assume no therapy will be had for these things, and you kind of start to see why the Aes Sedai are the way they are.
Yeah.
Emotionalists, like sort of like sages kind of thing, but like you kind of start to see like, okay, they go through this traumatic stuff in order to become just the initiates, not even just this isn't
Because
the final thing. They still have to do another test to become Aes Sedai, assuming.
yeah, I guess it's like they wash away. It's kind of like a baptism,
Yeah,
but like you're like shedding your old life and stepping into the life of the White Tower.
yeah. which, I guess makes sense, but it's also just like so dehumanizing,
Yeah.
and then very kind of gross. But
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the eyes of
But
that for you.
yeah, but Nynaeve isn't accepted now.
Yeah. And she did it, and I think she still held to herself because she didn't like come out as a robot, which I
Yeah.
I think is what they kind of want to happen. So I'm glad. It does seem like Nynaeve did not, accept this as a good way of, challenging someone.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is the last chapter for this segment. So next we'll pick back up with seemingly Rand and Perrin and Matt and see where they're at, and hopefully, we kind of get some sort of, we start to tie some of this stuff up. I feel like at this point in the series, in this book, we've kind of we've been through so much with like the hunt has been done, it seems, in some way, and like where does it culminate? I feel like at this point I was just kind of like, these things are interesting, but like, where are we going? What's happening here? Because in a weird place, and not even you know Egwene still in the White Tower. Doesn't I don't know what their trajectory is going to be for the story either. So I'm kind of anxious at this point to get
Yeah.
going to something else here.
My one complaint about this book overall is it feels like it doesn't have like a beginning, middle, and end. It's
Mm-hmm.
very like it's just a very well, there is one, but it's very subtle. So I guess we can't talk about it yet. But it's when you're in it, you don't feel like you're in the middle of a novel.
Yeah, and I think that's like that's the shortcoming of this one because I think there's definitely good stuff that happens. Um,
Yeah.
good stuff to come, obviously. Spoiler alert, but I do think this is it's a weird part of it because it's like we said before, they got the horn, and it's just like I feel like at this point I'm like, okay, Selene's weird. Where do Matt and Perrin fit in here, and how's everything going to tie up? I'm kind of confused at this point because it seems like the story might be kind of
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
But
And everybody's like separated in random
right,
places. And
I feel like you could have almost like made a short mini book here and
yeah.
ended it
Yeah.
here. But yeah, no, it does not end. We're only merely halfway through. So next week we will figure out what happens next.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us for our 12th episode of The Great Honey. Find us on Instagram and Twitter as @GreatHoneyPod and Great Honey on TikTok, and The Great Honey anywhere you can find podcasts as well as on YouTube. I hope my Midwestern accent actually like differentiates between all of those. I think it does, but I don't know.
I think I get it. I can pick it up.
And we'll be releasing new episodes every Friday-ish. Heavy emphasis on the ish.
Ish, yes.
Until then, see you around.
See ya.